Hello friends. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I had been awake for nearly 14 hours by the time we crossed the Kentucky state line. My sister, Marla, sat in the passenger seat beside me, scrolling half-heartedly through her phone, the screen brightness low to keep from straining her eyes. We had left Toledo just after noon, trying to reach Clarksville, Tennessee, before midnight, so we could surprise our stepdad the morning after his shoulder surgery. Marla was older by a year and a half, the kind of person who color codes her grocery list and prints backup copies of every reservation. She had planned the whole trip, fuel stops, estimated arrival times, even the playlist. But by the time the clock on the dashboard ticked past 11:18 p.m., even she admitted we had pushed too far. I could feel the exhaustion like a physical weight pressing behind my eyes. The last open gas station we'd passed had been nearly an hour earlier, and the interstate ahead of us was nothing but dark pavement, farmland, and tree lines that rose like black walls on either side. "Let's stop at the next rest area," Marla murmured without looking up. "Just 10 minutes. I feel sick from sitting." I didn't argue. My back ached, my fingers tingled from gripping the wheel, and the caffeine from my last gas station Americano had evaporated from my bloodstream miles ago. I blinked hard, trying to keep the yellow lane markers sharp instead of fuzzy. When the faded green sign appeared, rest area, 1 mile. It felt like a hallucination. I flicked the turn signal out of pure muscle memory. There wasn't another car in sight. The exit ramp curved gently downhill, dropping us into a small, dimly lit rest stop tucked against a dense patch of woods. The parking lot couldn't have had more than 20 or 25 spaces, most of them cracked and faded from years of neglect. A squat brick building sat at the far end, the kind of design that screamed, built in 1970 and never updated once since. A single orange sodium lamp buzzed above the restroom entrance. Everything else was swallowed in darkness. That's when I saw it. The only other vehicle there. A massive black GMC Yukon, parked close to the tree line at the very back of the lot. Every window pitch black. Not tinted. Blackened. So dark I couldn't even see a reflection. No headlights. No taillights. No movement. No sound. Just sitting there like an animal waiting for something. Marla made a quiet noise in her throat, something between a hum and a swallow. But she didn't say anything. We were too tired to think straight, too tired to trust our instincts. I parked 3 spots away from the restroom building, close to the light. The moment we opened our doors, the night hit us. Thick humidity, wet soil, crickets so loud they felt angry. I stretched my arms and back, grimacing as several joints cracked loudly. Marla rubbed her neck and grabbed her small purse. Neither of us looked toward the Yukon. Not yet. But I could feel it. Like a presence. Like something watching. The concrete walkway leading to the restrooms was cracked and stained. The vending machine outside the women's room was busted, its glass broken and taped over with weather-beaten cardboard. "Let's make it quick," I muttered. Marla nodded. Inside, the restroom smelled of industrial cleaner barely hiding mildew. 2 of the overhead fluorescent bulbs were dead. The other 2 flickered unevenly, giving the room an almost strobe light effect that made shadows pulse on the tiled walls. Marla slipped into the first stall. I hovered at the sink, splashing water on my face. The mirror was scratched and fogged, making my reflection look like a smeared ghost. When Marla finished washing her hands beside me, she gave me a tight half smile, the kind that says, Let's not talk about the creepy SUV outside. But yes, I saw it too. We walked back toward the exit, and that's when I heard it. An engine turning over. Low, heavy, controlled. My stomach dropped. The Yukon was no longer parked. It was moving, slowly, silently, creeping across the parking lot toward our car with its headlights off. Marla's hand clamped onto my wrist. I could feel her trembling. We stood frozen for a long second, watching the SUV roll like a black submarine across the lot. The windows were still too dark to see inside. The engine made that deep, rumbling idle that large V8s have, a sound you feel in your chest more than your ears. It pulled up directly behind our car, bumper nearly touching ours, angled in a way that blocked our only exit path. No one got out. No headlights turned on. Just idled there. Waiting. Instinct screamed at me. Every medical class I'd taken about danger response. Every lecture my stepdad had given us about traveling at night. Every true crime story I'd ever shoved out of my head. Marla whispered, We can get in fast, right? Just get in. Lock the doors, drive around them. I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. We walked toward the car, trying to look casual, trying not to look like prey. My keys were already in my hand, my thumb hovering over the unlock button. 20 feet. 15. 10. No movement from the Yukon. No voice. No door opening. Just that awful idle rumble vibrating through my ribs. We got to the car. I yanked open the driver door. Marla dove into the passenger seat. I slammed my door, hit the lock button, and shoved the key into the ignition. A hard, sharp knock on my window. Knuckles hitting glass. I flinched violently. My knee smashed into the dashboard. A man stood there, right outside my door, out of nowhere. Or maybe he'd been crouched behind the SUV, waiting. He wore a dark jacket with the hood drawn low, shadow hiding most of his face. He knocked again, slower this time, then leaned closer and spoke through the glass. Muffled voice, but clear enough. "Hey, my truck won't start. Can you help me out? Need a jump. You got cables in there?" Everything inside me recoiled. His truck was running. I could feel its engine from inside my car. Marla shook her head rapidly. I mouthed sorry without rolling the window down. The man tilted his head, studying me. I couldn't see his eyes, but I could feel them. He knocked again, harder, and pointed toward the SUV, motioning for me to get out. "No," Marla whispered. "No, no, no." She lifted her phone. No signal. Not even a flicker of service. We were in a dead zone. I turned the key. The Camry engine roared to life. Relief flooded me. The man stepped back half a foot, surprised, annoyed. Another shape appeared in my side mirror. A second man, shorter, broader, walking from behind the Yukon, circling the back of our car, approaching Marla's side. "This is bad," she whispered. "This is really bad. Go. Just go." I slammed the car into reverse before I even fully processed what I was doing. The Camry smashed into the Yukon's bumper. Plastic and metal scraped loudly. But I didn't stop. I cranked the wheel, trying to angle around. The Yukon moved with us, matching our movement, blocking us, like they'd practiced it, like they knew exactly how to trap a smaller car. The man at my window started pounding the glass now, shouting. Gone was the polite tone. Now it was pure rage. Marla screamed, "Go!" Then, headlights, bright, white, real, appearing from the highway. A semi-truck turning into the rest area. Everything changed instantly. The man at my window stopped hitting the glass. The second man froze. The Yukon suddenly reversed. Quick, clean, opening a gap they'd refused to give us seconds before. I didn't hesitate. I slammed the car into drive, floored the gas, shot through the narrow space. Metal scraped again, but I didn't care. The semi's horn blared, long and deafening, echoing through the lot as we sped past it and back onto the interstate. In the rearview mirror, I saw the Yukon reversing rapidly into the shadows, deeper into the tree line, lights still off, disappearing like it had never been there. We didn't stop driving for 20 miles. When we finally pulled into a 24-hour diner in a small town called Kavanaugh, my whole body was shaking uncontrollably. Marla sobbed silently, clutching her dead signal phone like a lifeline. We called the sheriff's office from the diner's landline. A deputy arrived 40 minutes later, a weary man named Harlow, who listened with a grim, unsurprised expression. He took our statements, took photos of the damage, then said quietly, "This isn't the first time something like that's been reported at that rest area, but folks usually get scared, drive off, and don't call it in. You two did the right thing. That place, it attracts the wrong sort." "The wrong sort?" I repeated. His jaw tensed. He didn't answer. Not fully. Just said, "You're lucky that trucker showed up when he did." We reached Clarksville at sunrise. Didn't tell our stepdad the full story. Just enough for him to hug us too tightly and tell us never to stop at deserted rest areas after midnight. I didn't sleep well for weeks. Even now, years later, I avoid rest stops entirely, day or night. I know what waited for us that night. I know how close we were to being taken. Because the moment headlights appeared, those men fled. That SUV retreated. Predators don't run from victims, they run from witnesses. And every time I pass one of those lonely highway rest areas, I feel that same cold knot in my stomach. Because I know, deep down, they're still out there. Waiting for someone tired enough to pull in. Waiting for someone who doesn't listen to that small voice of instinct. Waiting for someone who thinks they're being paranoid. We almost didn't drive away that night. Almost. Friday nights have never been kind to me, but November 2016 carved itself into my memory in a way no winter ever had. I was 31 then, still living in rural Ohio, working the night shift at a distribution warehouse on the outskirts of Lancaster. Most people from my high school class had scattered to bigger cities, Pittsburgh, Chicago, Denver, chasing opportunities I never cared much for. I stayed behind, partly for family, partly because the quiet roads and empty fields felt like home. Peak season at the warehouse was unforgiving. Long hours, constant rushing, constant noise. By the time 2 a.m. rolled around, my whole body felt like someone had poured concrete into my bones. All I wanted was to get home, crack open a cold beer, and fall asleep to whatever late-night infomercials played on Channel 12. I always took State Highway 33, then cut through a small rural exit that connected to County Road 12. Quiet, empty, no traffic lights, no patrol cars. Just darkness and the hum of my pickup's engine. That night, the fog was thin but steady, sliding across the pavement like ghost breath. I remember thinking, not for the last time, that quiet roads sometimes hide the worst things. It was 2:22 a.m. when I reached the exit ramp. I remember the exact time because I'd glanced at the glowing blue digits on my dashboard just before I began to slow down. My headlights swept across the curve of the ramp, catching the guardrail and the tall, frost-bitten grass beyond it. And that's when I saw it. A baby car seat, sitting perfectly upright in the middle of the exit ramp. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. Fog can make anything look distorted. But no, it was real. A small blanket was draped over the top, tucked neatly, almost deliberately. The kind of soft fleece blanket you'd expect to see in Walmart's baby aisle. I instinctively eased my foot off the gas. My truck rolled to a slow, uneasy stop about 25 feet away. There were no other vehicles around, no tire tracks, no skid marks, no glass, no sign of an accident, just that car seat. And silence, the kind of silence that presses against your ears until you can hear your own heartbeat inside your skull. My first thought was the obvious one. Someone needs help. But something inside me, something ancient and primal, whispered, "Don't get out. Not yet." The placement was too perfect, the ramp too remote, the whole scene too calculated. I scanned the tree line beyond the guardrail. That's when I saw the grass move. Not wind, not an animal. Movement, slow, intentional, like someone crouching lower, trying to stay hidden. My heartbeat jolted. I leaned forward toward the windshield, narrowing my eyes. And then I saw it clearly. A human shape, pressed low in the dead grass, watching. At first I thought maybe it was one person, someone injured, maybe confused. But the longer I stared, the clearer the outline became. Shoulders, a bent head, arms braced in the grass. Someone waiting. Someone who had been waiting. A chill crawled along my spine. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I reached to the passenger seat where I kept a heavy D-cell flashlight and placed my hand on it, just in case. The figure in the grass didn't move. He didn't need to. The message was clear. They were waiting for whoever stopped. And then, because my luck has always been rotten, I saw a second figure. Up the slope, closer to the tree line. This one was bulkier, broader shoulders, maybe wearing a dark hoodie. He shifted his weight just enough for me to see him rise slightly before sinking back down. 2 attackers, at least. My stomach twisted. This wasn't an accident. It was a setup. The kind you hear about on late-night security podcasts or in Facebook warnings from relatives who share everything. Except, this wasn't some urban legend. This was happening to me. At 2:23 a.m. on a dark rural exit ramp, with no cars for miles. I swallowed hard and slid my foot slowly onto the gas pedal. I angled the truck left, planning to go around the car seat and leave it intact. Some part of me, even then, was terrified there might actually be a baby inside. It made no sense. But fear is never rational. The moment my truck began to creep forward, the figure closest to me stood up. Not quickly, not aggressively, just stood. Tall, lean, face partially covered with a bandana pulled up to the bridge of his nose. He looked at me, not shocked, not panicked, just watching, like he'd seen it all before. People stopping, or not stopping. His eyes reflected the headlights for a brief, sharp moment. Then he stilled again, hands relaxed at his sides. It was that calmness, cold, patient, disciplined, that terrified me the most. This man wasn't desperate. He wasn't acting out of impulse. He was hunting. I pressed the gas harder. The truck rolled past the car seat, tires hugging the edge of the guardrail. As soon as I cleared it, I floored it. The back tires skidded slightly on the cold pavement before gripping. In my rear view, I saw the second figure stand all the way up, moving down the slope toward the ramp, and the first one turned his head, following my truck's movement with the slow, unhurried stare of someone memorizing a license plate. He reached into his pocket. A phone? A weapon? I didn't stay long enough to find out. Once I hit County Road 12, I kept the pedal down until the engine roared like it hadn't in years. The road was a long, empty stretch of black asphalt, cutting between fields and tree clusters. My headlights carved narrow tunnels through the fog, and the darkness outside felt heavier than usual, like it knew I'd escaped something that wanted me. I kept checking my mirrors. Nothing. No headlights. No engine behind me. Nothing but the vibrating hum of the truck, and my heartbeat shaking my chest. When I finally felt like I'd put enough distance between myself and what I'd seen, I pulled into a 24-hour speedway about 7 miles down the road. Bright lights, security cameras, people, safety. I parked directly under one of the canopy lights and leaned back against the headrest, breathing like I'd just finished running a marathon. An older woman working the register inside gave me a strange look through the window, probably because I sat there motionless for a good 2 minutes, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Eventually, I forced myself to pull out my phone. 911. I told the dispatcher everything, my voice shaking the entire time. The car seat, the movement in the grass, the masked man, the second figure, the pocket movement. All of it. She listened carefully. Too carefully. When I finished, she paused before speaking. Her voice changed. Lower. More serious. Sir, you're the 3rd report from that area this month. My blood ran cold. She told me one woman had reported a stroller placed on the road 5 miles north. Same setup, same time of night. Another man had stopped to investigate a car seat 2 weeks prior. He didn't get back into his car. They beat him unconscious, stole his vehicle, his wallet, and left him on the embankment with broken ribs, a fractured eye socket, and severe concussion. He survived. Barely. She told me, "You did the right thing. Do not go back there. Officers are on their way now." I stayed in that well-lit parking lot for over an hour. I couldn't force myself to drive home. Not yet. My body refused to believe I was safe. The dispatcher's voice echoed in my skull. The 3rd report this month, which meant those men had done this before, and they weren't going to stop. A detective named Holloway called me 48 hours later. Deep voice, tired tone, professional but grim. They found the car seat, exactly where I saw it. Empty. Just a prop. Bought secondhand. The blanket was clean. No fibers, no prints. They found footprints, 3 distinct sets, along the slope leading into the woods. Exactly where I'd seen the 2 figures. There was one more set deeper in the trees. A lookout. Maybe a driver. Maybe someone worse. Holloway told me these groups were hard to catch. They knew how to vanish quickly, especially when the roads were empty and the police response time was slow. Then he said something that stayed with me longer than anything else. "You're lucky. Most people don't walk away from setups like that." I didn't feel lucky. I felt targeted, like they'd seen my face, seen my truck, seen everything they needed to. For weeks afterward, I changed my route, added extra time to my commute, double-checked my locks, triple-checked my windows. Even now, years later, if I see anything unexpected on a dark road, I slow down automatically. My eyes drift to the embankment, to the tree line, to the shadows beyond my headlights. Because I learned something that night. Not every cry for help is real. Not every emergency is innocent. Some traps are designed specifically for people who care. People who want to do the right thing. People like me. People like you. Nobody ever warns you about the silence. Not the normal kind, not the quiet of your bedroom after a long day, or the hush of a library, but that deep, rural silence you only find on highways after midnight. The kind that seems to swallow every sound your car makes, where even your breathing starts to feel too loud. I'd driven long stretches before, but that night, the silence felt alive. I was heading from Portland, Oregon to Twin Falls, Idaho, a drive I'd made maybe a dozen times in the last 5 years. My older sister, her husband, and their 2 kids lived there, and I'd always promised myself I'd visit more often. Life doesn't always let that happen. But that month, after long shifts at the flooring warehouse and the sudden quiet of my empty apartment, I needed family more than usual. My daughter had just started first grade that fall, living with her mom across the state. And the sudden stillness at home when she wasn't around had gotten under my skin in a way I wasn't prepared for. I found myself scrolling pictures of her drawings and videos of her reading bedtime stories until my phone battery died every night. The trip to Twin Falls was my way of getting out of my own head. The clock on my dashboard glowed 1:47 a.m., temperature outside, 17 degrees Fahrenheit. I'd been on the road since 10. The gas station coffee I'd bought somewhere past Pendleton was barely doing its job. I felt that familiar heaviness behind the eyes that comes right before the body decides it's shutting down, with or without your permission. Little did I know, I wouldn't sleep for days after what happened. I remember the exact moment the silence snapped, because that was when he appeared. 1 second, the road ahead was empty, that endless black ribbon stretching across open farmland. And the next, my high beams caught a figure on the shoulder, so suddenly I gasped, like I'd seen a ghost rise straight out of the asphalt. He stood with one arm extended, thumb out, a large hiking backpack slung over one shoulder, the other hand shoved deep inside a pocket. My first instinct was to keep driving. My father drilled that into me when I was young. Never stop for anyone at night on the highway, no matter what. Drive to town, call it in. Don't stop. But something made me slow down. Maybe it was the number on the dash showing that bone-freezing temperature. Maybe it was the fact I hadn't seen another car in over 40 minutes. Maybe it was the way the guy was shivering so violently his silhouette shook in my headlights. Or maybe, and this part still bothers me, it was because I'd been that guy once. Broke, cold, alone, with nothing but a backpack of everything you owned. Whatever the reason, I pulled onto the gravel shoulder. I stopped about 30, maybe 40 feet past him. I watched him jog toward my car in the rearview mirror, his breath blooming in thick white clouds like smoke. When he climbed in, the first thing I noticed wasn't his face or his clothes. It was that he kept the backpack in his lap instead of tossing it into the back seat, like it was something precious or dangerous. The bag itself was army green, covered in a mix of patches and pins, national park badges, weird little symbols I didn't recognize, and a frayed US flag stitched on the side. It was stuffed so tightly the zipper curved awkwardly. He was younger than I expected, mid-20s maybe, with a scraggly beard growing in uneven clumps like he'd been trimming it with a pocket knife. His hair was messy, long enough to curl at the collar of his brown canvas coat. Too thin for this weather. Way too thin. But his eyes were the part I remember the most. They were pale. Not blue, not gray. Pale. Almost colorless. Like washed out ice. Eyes that seemed to flick around the inside of my car in quick, sharp movements. Like he was cataloging everything. He smelled faintly of cold sweat and something metallic beneath it. Not quite blood. Not quite rust. Something in between. I told him my name was Kevin. He nodded once. Didn't say his name. When I asked where he was heading, he just said, east. That was it. No town. No destination. Just east. I pulled back onto the highway, trying to make small talk just to fill the silence. Long night? Been traveling a while? Cold out there. He answered in single words, or half sentences, things that didn't line up. Sometime. Had business. Needed to leave. Walking was fine until it got dark. It felt less like talking to a person, and more like talking to a GPS with glitching audio. After a few minutes, I gave up. Let the silence return. Then, without saying a word, he reached forward and turned off my radio. just lifted his hand, pressed the button, and silenced the classic rock humming low through the speakers. The quiet that followed felt heavy, thick, like the air changed pressure inside the car. I kept my eyes locked on the road. Miles of black nothing ahead of us. My GPS said Huntington, Oregon, 41 miles. That was my checkpoint, my tiny speck of civilization, my goal. I planned to stop there for gas I didn't need, and a breath I desperately did. We rode in that thick silence for maybe 20 miles. Then he laughed. Not a chuckle, not a laugh at something I said. I hadn't spoken in 10 minutes. Just a short, sharp burst that came out of nowhere, like a hiccup or a glitch. I glanced over. He was staring straight ahead, his lips moving slightly, like he was talking to himself or to someone else, someone I couldn't see. When he caught me watching, he smiled. No warmth, no friendliness, just a smile stretched too wide, too flat, like someone imitating a human expression. And then he asked, "Do you believe in fate?" I said I didn't know. He shook his head once. Slow. Wrong answer. That was the moment everything shifted. He started talking. Fast. Not normal fast, but a disconnected, frantic stream of consciousness monologue that jumped between topics without logic. A woman named Jolene who ruined his plans. A dog he used to have that never listened until the end. A man at a rest stop who said too much. Cell towers tracking everyone. People hiding in plain sight. His voice would whisper 1 second and nearly shout the next, like he couldn't control the volume. Then, out of nowhere, he slammed his fist into the dashboard. Hard. Hard enough to make the air vents rattle. I jerked. My pulse hammered. He muttered a rehearsed-sounding apology. Sorry, I get excited. That was when every survival instinct in my body clicked on. The silence outside suddenly felt hostile. The empty fields, the dark mountains, the lack of headlights behind us. It all felt wrong. Everything inside me screamed, "Don't stop the car. Don't make him angry. Don't show fear." He asked me why I stopped for him. I said the truth, that it was cold. He tilted his head, studying me like I was an object. Weak reason. People don't stop at night unless they want something. Or unless they're running. Which one are you? I swallowed. Said neither. Said I was visiting family. He didn't respond. Just watched me the entire time I spoke. Then, he unzipped the backpack, slowly, deliberately. I told myself not to look. I looked anyway. Inside I saw tightly rolled clothes, a flashlight, a bundle of zip ties, what looked like duct tape, and the metal handle of something partially wrapped in a shirt. Before I could fully register it, he zipped the bag closed. He kept eye contact the entire time. No blink, no shift, nothing. I like to be prepared, he said softly. You never know who you'll meet on the road. My GPS chimed. Huntington, 26 miles. 26 miles had never felt that far. He started asking about my route. Why I chose Highway 20 instead of sticking to I-84. Why I left late. Why I didn't take the mountain pass. His tone changed. Not curious, probing, calculating. Then he said, "Take the next left." There was no left, just open land and shadow. I said I'd stick to my route. His whole face changed in a flash. Expression gone, blank, rigid, like a mask sliding off. I wasn't asking. His right hand drifted to the bag. The zipper pulled open again. Time slowed. He pulled out a hunting knife, serrated, worn, big enough to gut a deer. He rested it against his thigh casually, like he'd done it before. "Stay calm," he said. "Nobody gets hurt if you cooperate." There's a service road in 8 miles. My mind raced. If I slammed the brakes, he'd reach me before I unbuckled. If I crashed the car, We'd both likely die. If I fought, he was younger. Faster. Then I remembered something my dad once said about emergencies. Greater than control the car. The driver always has more power than the passenger. So I slowed down, 1 mile per hour at a time. 70, 65, 60. He didn't notice at first. Then, headlights appeared in the rearview mirror. A pair of bright white beams cresting the highway curve behind us. A truck. Big one. Maybe an 18-wheeler. Hope punched through the fear like a needle of light. I waited until the truck closed in behind us. Then I made my move. 3 things in a split second. 1. I slammed the horn and held it down. 2. I flashed my high beams repeatedly. 3. I swerved hard across both lanes. The man shouted, lunged with the knife, but the swerve threw him sideways, and he only sliced my jacket sleeve. The truck behind us blared its massive horn and pulled into the oncoming lane to come alongside me. The driver, a big guy with a beard, stared into my car. I pointed at my passenger. I mouthed, "Help," again and again. The trucker's expression shifted instantly. He grabbed his CB radio, started talking rapidly. My passenger went still, silent, eyes unblinking, calculating. Then he laughed. That same sharp, shrill, tearing laugh. "You're smarter than the others," he wheezed. "Most people just obey." Then he did something I still replay in nightmares. He unlocked the door while we were doing 40. Before I could react, before the trucker could react, before anything, he looked at me one last time and said, "I'll remember your face." Then he clutched his backpack, tucked the knife into it, and threw himself out of the moving car. The door slammed open. The blast of cold air hit like a punch. I braked so hard the anti-lock system squealed under me. The truck screeched to a stop ahead, hazard lights flashing. The driver ran toward me shouting, "You okay? I called state police. Don't move." But I didn't answer. I just stared at the open passenger door rocking in the wind. My hands shook so violently I could hear my own teeth clattering. When the troopers arrived, they searched for almost 2 hours. Flashlights sweeping every inch of frozen grass. Tracking dogs sniffing through the ditch. Officers calling into the dark. They found nothing. No footprints. No blood. No torn fabric. Nothing to show anyone had been there. The officer who took my statement said, predators sometimes staged escape routes and stash vehicles off-road. He told me I was lucky, because 3 people had gone missing along that same highway stretch in the last 2 years, and none were ever found. I reached Twin Falls at sunrise. I haven't driven that highway at night since. But sometimes, when I'm tired or unfocused, I'll glance at the side of a road, anywhere, and swear I see pale eyes watching me, waiting, thumb out, like he's still looking for the next person kind enough to stop. Rural America has a strange way of making you feel small, not just physically, emotionally. By the time you're an hour outside of any major city, the world seems to stretch out into a flat, endless sheet of nothingness. Gas stations thin out, houses turn into scattered dots, and even radio stations fade until all you hear is static. I'd always liked driving long distances. Road trips felt therapeutic after the stress of work. But what happened in March 2019 nearly cured me of that forever. I was heading west out of Kansas City, trying to get back home to Greeley, Colorado, after attending a co-worker's memorial service. He wasn't a close friend or anything, but I guess grief has a way of pulling people together, and I felt obligated to at least show my face. It had been a draining day. A room full of people pretending they knew the deceased better than they actually had. Forced small talk, awkward condolences. It all left a heaviness inside me that I hadn't shaken off yet. I didn't feel like staying the night in Missouri again, so I figured I'd make it as close to Colorado as possible before crashing at some random motel. I checked the time, 8:12 p.m. If I pushed through for 5 more hours, I'd be home. I had road trip snacks, a thermos of coffee, and a playlist that usually kept me energized. But the weather had other plans. The first raindrops hit my windshield around 9 p.m., just outside a place called Dover Hill. At first it was soft, the kind of drizzle that feels more atmospheric than threatening. But 10 minutes later, it became a full-on torrential assault. My wipers hammered back and forth, but they were useless against the sheets of rain slamming into the glass. The sky had turned the color of a bruise, purple, black, angry, and distant flashes of lightning cracked across the plains, stretching from horizon to horizon. I turned off the music so I could focus. Visibility dropped to maybe 20 feet. Every oncoming set of headlights felt like it was tearing straight through my retinas. The highway was flooding faster than made sense. My tires vibrated as water pooled beneath them. Even with both hands gripping the wheel, I could feel the car getting shoved around by gusts of wind. It was bad. Really, really bad. When my GPS spoke up, faster route available, exit in 1.2 miles. I didn't think twice. That was my first mistake. The exit sign was almost invisible. No green reflective board, no number, no town name. Just a thin metal pole with 2 silver reflectors that flashed for a second as my headlights hit them. Before I could second-guess myself, I was already on the narrow off-ramp, the highway disappearing behind me in a sheet of rain. The new road was much tighter, almost claustrophobic, with tall, wet grass brushing the edges. Potholes made my suspension groan every few seconds. According to the GPS, I was approaching a small town called Windham Hollow, population unknown. On the screen, the map showed clusters of houses, tidy little neighborhood blocks, and 2 cross streets. But through my windshield, pure darkness. No porch lights, no lit windows, no motion, just shadows that seemed to stack on top of each other. A mailbox appeared out of nowhere on the right, making me slow to a near stop. The name stenciled on it, barely visible through rust, was Haverton. My GPS showed a house icon exactly there, but there was nothing behind the mailbox. Just tall weeds, broken concrete slabs, and the ghostly outline of a foundation half swallowed by dirt. Maybe the house burned down recently, I thought. Maybe the GPS data was just old. Then I passed another mailbox, and another, and another. Every single one stood in front of an empty lot. Some had blackened remains, char marks on splintered beams. Some were just bare dirt and rubble. One even had a child's swing set, rusted and half collapsed. But no houses. No one living there. Yet the GPS insisted this was a populated residential area. A bolt of lightning lit up the land around me. And that's when I noticed something that froze my spine. Some of the foundations had fresh tire tracks leading into them, as if cars had driven right up to where houses should have been. By now, anxiety was crawling across my skin. I slowed to a stop at what my phone said was a T-junction, Maple Ridge Road, and Old County Way. But the road signs were gone, only empty poles remaining. My phone signal dropped to 1 bar, then blinked out entirely. No service. The rain hammered the roof, drowned the world in white noise. I rolled the window down a few inches and listened. No dogs barking, no generators, no TVs, no distant hum of farm equipment. Nothing. Just the storm, and an eerie silence underneath it. I felt like I had driven straight into a place that didn't want to exist. I tapped my phone screen, trying to reload the map. The little circle spun and spun. Then something bright flashed in my rearview mirror. Headlights. A vehicle, far back, maybe half a mile, approaching slowly. I exhaled in relief. Another traveler. Someone else lost out here too. But the more I watched those lights, the more wrong it felt. The vehicle wasn't driving normally. It was creeping, crawling, moving with purpose, not speed, like it was searching for something. I debated flashing my hazards to signal for help, but something deep in my gut told me not to. Then another pair of headlights appeared, this time in front of me, coming down the narrow gravel path the GPS wanted me to continue on. Two vehicles, from opposite directions, both moving at a slow, deliberate pace, a trap forming without a sound. My pulse slammed in my ears. I was boxed in. The car behind me was now maybe 40 yards away. The one in front slowed to a stop about 20 feet from my bumper. A dark sedan, mud splattered, dented hood, missing front plate. No movement inside. Then the vehicle behind me, a pickup, came to a stop 30 feet back, its headlights filling my mirrors with a blinding white glare. I couldn't see a thing inside it either. My breath went shallow. For a few moments, nobody moved. The rain was the only thing keeping me from total silence. Induced panic. Finally, both vehicles' driver's side doors opened at the exact same time. Perfectly synchronized. Two silhouettes stepped out. They didn't charge toward me. They didn't shout. They just stood there, bodies barely moving, heads angled toward my car, watching. Then a third door opened. I hadn't noticed a passenger in the sedan until then. A woman emerged from the back seat. Tall, lanky, wearing a long raincoat that hung off her like wet paper. She began walking toward my car, slowly, unhurried, as if she knew I had nowhere to go. A lightning flash lit her face. And God, her expression was so empty it was wrong. Just blank skin stretched over a skull with no emotion behind it. She raised a hand and made a slow, circular crank motion. "Roll down your window." I shook my head hard. She tilted her head, almost curious, and knocked lightly on the glass. A soft little tap, tap, tap. Another flash made me jump. The man from the pickup, a big guy, maybe mid-30s, heavy beard collecting rain, walked to my passenger side window and mirrored her, tapping the glass with the same calm rhythm. They weren't yelling, weren't rushing, just waiting, like people who'd done this before. From the sedan, the second man stayed by his door, leaning against the roof, watching in total stillness. My heart pounded so hard I could barely think. The woman tapped again. Tap, tap, tap. Then she pointed to my door lock. A simple gesture. "Open the door," I mouthed. "No," shaking my head vigorously. The bearded man reached into his jacket and pulled something out. A crowbar. He didn't lift it, didn't threaten me. He just held it casually, letting me understand. They weren't planning on breaking in immediately. They were waiting for me to panic, waiting for me to run out of options, waiting for me to open the door myself. My father's voice came back to me suddenly, something he said when I was learning to drive. If someone ever tries to force you out of your vehicle, don't get out, but don't ever sit still either. Stillness is what kills you. Movement. I needed movement. I scanned the area. The left side of the road held the empty lot with the Haverton mailbox. No fence, no barrier, just mud and tall grass. If my car could cut through it and reach the service road I'd glimpsed earlier, I might escape. It was stupid. It was dangerous. But staying meant getting dragged out into the storm by three strangers with dead eyes. I made my choice. With shaking hands, I slammed my car into drive and jerked the wheel left. The Subaru lurched forward hard, bouncing into the muddy lot. The woman shouted, "Sharp! Sudden!" The bearded man lunged toward my door but slipped on the mud. My tires spun wildly, slinging muck behind me. The car bucked and jolted as it smashed over broken bricks, buried debris, dips in the earth. This was no road, just a skeleton of what used to be a home. Behind me, headlights swung violently as the pickup driver tried to follow, but I was already plowing through the tall weeds toward the faint strip of dirt in the distance. My car slammed into something hard, maybe a chunk of foundation, but I kept my foot down. The service road came into view, a thin trail running parallel to the main path. I burst through a line of dead shrubs and onto it, fishtailing but staying upright. I didn't look back. I just drove. For maybe 15 minutes, though it felt much longer, I tore through winding dirt paths, abandoned farm lanes, and unmarked access roads. Eventually, the mud gave way to gravel. Then the gravel gave way to actual pavement. And at last, a highway sign appeared. Real lanes, real lights, civilization. I didn't stop until I spotted a glowing Phillips 66 station. I pulled in, parked crooked, and sat shaking in my seat for nearly 10 minutes before I could force myself inside. A bored-looking kid behind the counter stared at my soaked clothes. "You all right, sir?" "No," I said honestly. "Do you know a place called Windham Hollow?" He frowned. "Never heard of it." When I got back in my car, I had full signal again. I searched the name. What came up turned my stomach. Windham Hollow, ghost town, abandoned, 1987, population 0, known for suspicious disappearances, property fires, unverified reports of hostile locals. There were news articles, old ones, about travelers going missing during storms, people misled by wrong GPS data, investigations that turned cold, a pattern spanning decades. I reported everything the next day to a sheriff's office 2 counties over. The deputy who took the report looked skeptical, but polite. A week later, a detective called, asking for more details. He confirmed. There have been other stories like yours, but I never heard back again. It's been 6 years. I still travel for work sometimes, driving those long, lonely highways that stretch across the Midwest. But I never take detours now. And when I see an exit sign that isn't really a sign, just a metal pole with 2 fading reflectors, I don't slow down. I keep my eyes forward, and I keep driving, because some towns aren't meant to be found, and some roads only lead one way. Every December, without fail, my older brother Marcus insists on hosting Christmas at his home in Greensboro, North Carolina. And every December, without fail, I argue with myself about whether I should just fly instead of driving all the way from my place near Newark, New Jersey. But flights in December? Bah, they cost more than sanity. And honestly, I used to enjoy long drives, empty highways, late-night radio, nothing but the sound of tires slicing through darkness. At least, that's what I thought, before the night that changed how I feel about road trips forever. That Friday, I left work late, way later than planned. I'm an on-call network engineer, and of course the company's primary server node decided to throw a tantrum at 7:52 p.m. By the time I got on the road, it was almost 9. Night had already eaten the sky whole. The first few hours were easy enough. I stopped just past Washington, grabbed a gas station hot dog that probably violated several FDA regulations, filled up my thermos with strong black coffee, and got back on I-95 South. Winter nights on the East Coast are a different kind of cold, not the kind that stings your skin, the kind that sits inside the air and waits. Traffic thinned out as I left Maryland behind. The world turned into long, empty stretches of asphalt, faint glows of distant farmhouses, and forests that pressed against the highway like walls waiting to close in. I put on a podcast about unsolved disappearances, something chilling but entertaining enough to keep me awake. For the next hour, everything felt routine, normal, peaceful. But peace doesn't last on roads like that. Not at night, and not for people driving alone. I remember the exact moment things changed. Time, 11:42 p.m. Location, somewhere between South Hill and La Crosse, Virginia. Highway nearly empty. Visibility decent, but eerie. I looked in my rearview mirror and saw a pair of headlights cresting a hill far behind me. At first, I didn't think twice. One lone car behind you on an empty highway can even feel reassuring, proof that the world isn't completely asleep. But the lights were unusually bright. Too bright. Bright enough that even from a distance, they already looked harsh, almost sharp. I blinked hard and focused back on the road. Maybe they would pass me soon. Maybe some impatient driver was in a hurry. But 5 minutes passed, then 10. And every time I glanced into the mirror, the lights were closer and brighter. Like someone was shining high-beam floodlights straight into my skull. I flipped the mirror up into night mode to reduce the glare. It helped, but only a little. My mirrors were practically glowing white. I muttered under my breath, "Turn your damn brights off." But the driver didn't. If anything, they got closer. By midnight, the headlights were locked behind me, not tailgating, not passing, not falling back. Just there. Too close. Too bright. Too deliberate. I sped up from 70 to 78. They sped up too. I slowed to 65. They slowed too. I changed lanes. They followed. Heart rate rising, palms sweating, throat dry. I told myself I was overreacting. Night driving messes with depth perception. The light can distort. Adrenaline can create illusions. I'm not a paranoid person. But something about those headlights felt wrong. Really wrong. The other car stayed exactly the same distance behind me. Maybe 3 car lengths, no matter what speed I chose. Too precise to be coincidence. Too measured to be careless driving. I switched lanes again. They switched lanes instantly. "Okay, that's not normal," I whispered. The emptiness of the highway made the situation somehow worse. No cars ahead, no cars behind, no exits for miles. Just me and whoever was behind me. Finally, an exit sign appeared. Exit 24. Rawlings, State, Route 629. Never heard of it. Rural area. Completely unfamiliar. But I needed to know if this strange driver was really following me, or if I was just spiraling into my own imagination. So I flicked on my turn signal. Nothing happened behind me. I slowed down. The headlights didn't change lanes. For a second, relief washed through me. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe. At the very last moment, the truck swerved across the dashed lines and shot onto the exit behind me so fast, its tires screeched. I flinched. Adrenaline shot through my veins. That wasn't normal. That wasn't accidental. That was intentional. I whispered, "Oh God." Now we were on a 2-lane rural road, lined with ancient woods that turned the world into a tunnel of black. No houses, no streetlights, no other cars. Only 2 vehicles on that dark, forgotten ribbon of asphalt. Mine. And the one that had chosen me. I picked up speed. 50. 55. 60. The road curved sharply, and my tires groaned. My high beams showed nothing except crooked fences, pine trees leaning like watchers, and mailbox after mailbox belonging to houses too deep in the woods to see. I checked my phone. One flickering bar. I tried calling 911. Call failed. Tried again. Call failed. If you've ever felt true isolation, it's not silence or darkness. It's seeing a phone screen say, "No service," when you need it most. Behind me, the truck closed the gap. 2 car lengths, 1.5. So close the lights filled my entire rear window with blinding white. So close, I couldn't even see the shape of the vehicle. Just light. Smothering, consuming, suffocating light. They honked once, a long, low, sickening blast. Not angry, not impatient, more like a warning. The road eventually spit me out near a tiny intersection, just a blinking yellow traffic light and a rundown store glowing in the distance. A little convenience shop called Cedar Point Market. Parking lot empty. One dusty pickup parked near the entrance. Probably belonged to the store clerk. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just swerved hard, cutting into the lot and stopping right in front of the entrance. My brakes shrieked. Gravel sprayed. My heart nearly tore out of my chest. But the truck behind me didn't enter the lot. It rolled toward the entrance. Slowed. And then stopped at the very edge of the parking lot. Headlights still burning. Engine rumbling. Watching. Studying. Deciding. A predator with patience. I bolted inside. The man behind the counter looked up from a crossword puzzle. His name tag read, Russell. He looked mid-50s, wiry, wearing a flannel jacket and a tired expression that suggested he'd seen every type of late-night nonsense the world could throw at him. But even he straightened when he saw my face. "Sir." "Someone's following me," I said, breathless. "A truck. They chased me from the highway. They're right outside." Russell leaned sideways, peered through the window, and muttered, "That the dark blue truck out front?" I nodded, swallowing hard. His expression changed. Not fear. Not confusion. Recognition. Like he'd seen that truck before. He picked up the store phone and dialed the sheriff's office with the ease of a man who'd done it more than once. He hung up and told me, "Deputy's about 15 minutes out. Only one working this district at night. Stay low. Stay inside. Don't go near the windows." I crouched between shelves near the back. Motor oil, cleaning supplies, dusty cans that hadn't been touched in months. From there, I could still see the entrance. The truck stayed exactly where it was. Lights on. Silent. Waiting. Like it was enjoying this. 10 minutes crawled by. Every second. Heavy. Every moment thick with dread. Then, the headlights turned off. Total darkness swallowed the windshield. The engine revved, slow, deep, threatening. And the truck backed away, drifting onto the road like a shadow returning to the night. It didn't peel out, didn't speed up, didn't panic. Whoever was inside knew exactly what they were doing. They weren't scared of the cops. They just didn't want to be caught. Not tonight. February in Southern Virginia has always been unpredictable. Some days feel like early spring. Others feel like the tail end of a cruel winter. But that particular Sunday evening in 2017 carried a strange, deceptive calmness that didn't match the week leading up to it. I had just pulled out of my friend Jenna Whitlock's driveway, a small place tucked outside Raleigh, North Carolina. Jenna had given birth 4 days earlier. A tiny, wrinkly, red-faced son named Caleb, whose grip was surprisingly strong for someone who weighed less than a sack of flour. I had spent those 4 days helping her adjust, rocking the baby through his 2-hour sleep cycles, washing endless bottles, and pretending that her husband's attempts at dinner weren't borderline catastrophic. But honestly, I loved every minute of it. It was a break from my dull routine back in Norfolk, my desk job at Tidewatch Insurance, my cramped studio apartment, and the pressure of settling down that everyone in my graduating class seemed to be experiencing, except me. I graduated in 2008. Most of my peers had already crossed that threshold of adulthood. Kids, mortgages, dual-income households. Meanwhile, I had an aging Honda Accord, a dying fern on my balcony, and a boss who reminded me every Monday morning how flexible schedules don't mean arriving after 8. So that night, around 8 p.m., I hugged Jenna goodbye, promised I'd visit again, loaded my trunk with baby clothes she forced me to take for someday, and started the 6-hour drive home. For the first 3 hours, everything was normal. The road was familiar, the radio was tolerable, and the night sky was clear. But past the North Carolina border, around the stretch near Emporia, everything changed. The world outside my windshield turned pitch black. Not dark, black. The kind of blackness that doesn't look like absence of light, but like the presence of something heavy, swallowing the world whole. No streetlights, no passing cars, no reflective signs. My headlights carved a thin, trembling tunnel into the void. My phone lost signal right around that point. But that always happened there, so I didn't panic. I should have. I was flipping between crackling country stations when the steering wheel jerked violently to the right and the entire car shuddered. Then came that sound. Thup, 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 thup. I muttered a curse, guided the car onto the shoulder, and rolled to a stop in gravel. The dashboard clock read 11:51 p.m. I sat there for a few seconds, letting the silence press in from all sides. My headlights illuminated the empty road ahead. No buildings, no traffic, no sign of life. Just an endless line of leafless trees, like skeletons leaning toward the highway. I popped the trunk and stepped into the February cold. Instant regret. I had left my heavy jacket at Jenna's. The thin hoodie I wore felt like tissue paper against the biting wind. The rear passenger tire was utterly flat, rim almost touching the ground. Great. I had changed a tire once in high school, and barely. But I remembered enough. Jack, spare, wrench. I pulled the spare from the trunk and had just set it down when I noticed headlights far behind me. 2 small dots, growing larger. Out here, a passing car was practically a miracle. I squinted against the approaching glare, expecting it to slow, maybe roll down a window, maybe ask if I was okay. Instead, it pulled onto the shoulder, 30 feet behind me, high beams still on, blasting me with harsh white light. The engine kept running. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, lanky, dark jacket, jeans. Walked with a slow, deliberate pace, neither rushed nor relaxed, like his steps had been decided ahead of time. "Car trouble?" he called out when he was about 15 feet away. His voice sounded friendly enough, but it sliced through the silence in a way that made my stomach tighten. "Flat tire," I said, trying not to sound anxious. "I got it. Thanks, though." He kept walking until he was close enough for me to see his face in the angled glow of my taillights. Middle-aged, a stubbled jaw, shadowed eyes with a strange reflective gleam, and a smile that didn't look real. It looked performed, as if he had practiced it in a mirror until it resembled something a normal person might do. "Nonsense," he said brightly. "A lady alone shouldn't be doing this. Let me help." I did not want his help. Every instinct, every silent alarm was screaming, "Get in the car. Now." But women are trained from childhood to smile through fear, to be polite, to avoid being dramatic. So I stepped aside. He crouched by the tire, moving oddly slow, like someone stretching out a simple task for reasons only he knew. I noticed he didn't even look at the jack properly at first, just fiddled with it as if waiting for something. "Name's Dawson," he said, not looking up. "Bad place to break down. Ain't nothing out here for miles." I lied and told him my name was Mara. My real name is Donna, and some survival instinct told me not to give him anything true. He glanced up at me then. Those deep-shadowed eyes caught the faint light in a way that made my skin prickle. "You headed far?" he asked. I mumbled something vague about visiting family in Maryland. "A long drive," he said softly. "All by yourself?" Something about the way he said it, too interested, too observant, made the hairs on my arms stand up. I took a step toward my car door. He noticed immediately. He stood up abruptly, stepping between me and the door. "Where are you going?" he asked. Still polite on the surface, but underneath, something darker. I need my flashlight," I lied. His head tilted, studying me like a puzzle. "Headlights are fine," he said. "Why don't you come hold these lug nuts for me? Need someone to keep them organized." He gestured toward the dark side of my car, out of the light. I didn't move. He didn't like that. His smile faded slowly, peeled away like a mask slipping off. We just stared at each other. Then, headlights appeared ahead of us, approaching from the opposite direction. His head snapped toward the road. I moved. I bolted for my door, yanked it open, threw myself inside, and slammed the lock with my elbow. He was at my window instantly, palm flat against the glass, face close, expression cold. "Open the door, Mara," he said calmly. "You're being dramatic. I'm helping you." My shaking fingers fumbled for my keys, still in the ignition. The oncoming car passed by without slowing. Dawson looked at its taillights, then back at me. His expression changed, calculated, evaluating. He slapped the window once, hard, then stepped back and walked toward my trunk. He grabbed something. I couldn't see what. Then he crouched by the tire again, moved his hands fast. Metal clanged. The jack collapsed, falling sideways, bent. He stood, walked unhurriedly to his car, and before getting in, leaned down to my window. "See you down the road," he said with a slow curl of his mouth. Not a smile. Something worse. He drove off, heading the same direction I had been going. My heart pounded so violently, it felt like it might tear my ribs apart. I waited until his taillights vanished before getting out again. The tire hadn't just blown. There was a clean slit, 3 inches long. Sharp, deliberate. Someone had cut it, and the realization hit me like cold water. He did this, probably at the last gas station I stopped at in North Raleigh. He had been following me, maybe for miles, maybe since the very beginning. Panic consumed me. Driving forward on a ruined tire meant going straight toward him. Staying meant he could circle back. Going backward meant miles of deserted highway with no signal. Then I remembered. 2 miles back, I'd passed a gravel turnoff, an old farmhouse. Lights had been on. It was the only option. I grabbed my small pepper spray canister and stepped into the blackness, turning off my headlights to avoid being seen. Walking on that highway shoulder felt like walking through a nightmare. My footsteps were loud, my breath louder. Every rustle of dead grass sounded like a threat. Twice, headlights appeared. I dove into the ditch both times. The second time, I recognized the shape instantly. Dark sedan. No front plate. Dawson. He was searching. He drove slowly past, 10 miles an hour, sweeping the roadside with his high beams. I pressed myself into the cold mud, barely breathing. When he continued toward my abandoned car, I ran. Not on the road, through the field. Through roots, rocks, muddy ruts, anything to stay hidden. The farmhouse's faint porch light glowed like salvation in the distance. When I reached it, I pounded on the door with all my strength. An older man answered, gray hair, flannel robe. His expression switched instantly from confusion to concern. He let me inside. His wife handed me a phone, already dialing 911. Out the window, we watched a car slow near the turnoff, pause, then speed away into the dark. Police arrived 15 minutes later. They found my car exactly as I left it. The tire slit, the sabotaged jack, the trunk rummaged through. 2 days later, a detective called. The sedan had been found in a motel parking lot 40 miles north, wiped clean, reported stolen. No trace of Dawson. No real name. No identity. But then the detective said something that changed everything. Security footage from the Raleigh gas station showed a man matching Dawson's description, crouching by my tire, less than 30 seconds after I went inside to pay. Then, calmly walking back to his car. He had been following me long before my tire went flat. And then the detective said, "In cases like this, when we finally catch the guy, we usually learn it wasn't the first time, and not the last." I think about that every time I drive alone at night. Dawson is still out there, somewhere on a dark highway, waiting for someone else to pull over. Someone alone. Someone polite. Someone who doesn't realize what he really is until it's far, far too late.